Welcome back to the deep dive. If you're currently optimizing content, chances are you spend a lot of time looking outward, analyzing the market, checking competitor search results, defining your strategy based on those high-volume keywords. Well, today, we are fundamentally challenging that entire approach. We are diving deep into semantic SEO.
Yeah.
A strategy that demands we stop reacting to external search trends and instead pivot, like 180 degrees to look internally at our own domain of knowledge.
That's a really crucial conceptual pivot. The source material we've synthesized for this deep dive makes a very strong, almost confrontational case.
Right.
It argues that search engine optimization has matured past simple keyword matching. The central thesis is that to truly achieve high-quality ranking success, optimization must shift entirely away from explicit keywords.
Entirely. Wow.
Yeah, entirely. And focus instead on constructing implicit meaning and resolving the ambiguity that algorithms encounter, like every single day. We're moving from what words are people using to how do I engineer conceptual clarity.
Okay, so our mission today is to unpack exactly how to execute this. Well, this pretty radical shift. We're going to show you why building content based on structured, meaning unambiguous content is the future of relevance in the search engine results pages, the SRPs. And we are tackling the thorny issue head-on, why the conventional wisdom that prioritizes keyword volume and density is, under this advanced strategic lens, considered, well, basically obsolete.
Obsolete is a strong word, but yeah, that's the argument presented.
So if you're skeptical about throwing out keyword research, stick with us because we're going to explain the potential high cost of not making this switch. Right, let's start with the definition because the source material is meticulous about bounding this term. At its core, semantic SEO is defined as a strategy that aims to construct meaning by achieving a deep conceptual alignment across all your online documents, whether it's a single blog post or, the entirety of your website architecture.
And the goal of this construction, it's purely functional for the machine, really.
Yeah.
By aligning these concepts logically and structurally, the SEO professional helps search engines exponentially improve their understanding of what the content is truly about.
Okay.
This increased conceptual understanding then allows the algorithms to qualify the documents as inherently high quality. And, crucially, it increases their chance of being present when a user's query aligns with that concept.
So it's optimization by engineering conceptual clarity.
Exactly.
Not by trying to, trick a parser or chase keywords.
Precisely. No gaming the system here.
Okay, let's address the elephant in the room immediately. This thesis represents a radical break. I mean, the source material is absolutely uncompromising on the fact that semantic SEO explicitly rejects traditional SEO techniques.
It really is.
Can we be clearer on this for the listener? Does it mean we just use keyword tools differently, or is the rejection, complete?
The rejection is presented as total. Semantic SEO does not use keyword research tools to determine content direction. It does not use volume metrics to prioritize topics.
Wow.
Yeah, the source material is very forceful in saying that any definition you encounter that suggests using keywords in a new or modified way, well, it's describing something other than true semantic SEO.
So it's fundamentally incompatible.
That's the claim. Fundamentally incompatible with the explicit use of high-volume keyword research as the basis for content creation.
Okay, that is the part that seems, honestly, commercially irresponsible, perhaps, and I think many listeners are probably thinking the same thing right now.
Sure, I get that.
How do we justify that risk to a client who needs immediate ROI? If we abandon the search volume data, the historical benchmark for opportunity, how do we measure or justify the content direction? Where's the data?
That's a critical question, and it speaks, I think, to the core weakness the sources see in the traditional outside-in approach. High-volume keywords often represent the broadest, most ambiguous search intent possible.
Ambiguous.
Okay. Think about the word Apple.
Right.
It could mean the fruit, the tech company, maybe a record label, or even a local street name somewhere. If you optimize purely for the volume of the single word Apple,
right,
you end up in a highly contested space, forced to compete against massive brands, and you still haven't satisfied the user intent because you've just maintained the ambiguity. You haven't clarified anything.
Okay. So you're saying that chasing volume is essentially chasing ambiguity, and ambiguity is the enemy of relevance.
Precisely. That's the core idea. The mechanism for relevance in semantic SEO, therefore, isn't chasing external traffic waves. It is the provision of sophisticated, structured information.
Structured information, like metadata.
Exactly. We're talking about metadata and structural tagging that generates sense and semantically connects the underlying data points in your document. When this information is properly connected and unambiguous, it becomes relevant because it directly aids in the resolution of ambiguities when the search engine is trying to pinpoint the exact search intent of the user.
So keywords are just too crude.
According to this strategy, yes. They introduce noise rather than nuance.
Okay, so if the search engine is looking for nuance, how do we distinguish between the different structuring methods that are currently popular? We often hear terms like entity SEO or topic cluster, and they seem to get mixed up with semantic SEO.
Yeah, that's a common point of confusion.
What is the functional difference there?
We must clarify that terminology. Topic clusters, for example, that's a structural method, right? Where you organize your content around broad subjects, linking related articles to a central pillar page. Pretty standard stuff now.
Right.
And entity SEO focuses specifically on identifying and linking known entities, people, places, things, concepts within your text to concrete references in a knowledge base, like Wikipedia or Google's Knowledge Graph.
Okay, but the sources stress that entity SEO and topic clusters are not synonyms for semantic SEO. They're different.
That's absolutely right. While semantic SEO absolutely uses both topic clusters and entities, they're useful tools. The strategy itself is neither restricted to them nor oriented around them as the primary goal.
So they're components, not the whole thing.
Exactly. Entities are components, fundamental tools for resolving ambiguity, but they are not the defining principle. The defining principle of semantic SEO, the core difference, is the strategic shift we'll get into more detail on soon. The inside-out approach.
Right, the inside-out bit.
Yeah. Topic clusters and entities are simply the tactics you use to execute that larger strategic objective, which is structuring your intrinsic knowledge domain effectively.
Got it. So we're using the tools of entity SEO and topic clusters, maybe, but we're applying them to a blueprint that is drawn up entirely internally rather than being externally driven by market volume or what competitors are doing.
Exactly. The blueprint is the key differentiator. We are working backward from our established domain expertise, not forward from a keyword spreadsheet.
Okay, so this strategy clearly requires a linguistic foundation. We have to understand semantics itself. The sources define it, citing linguist Cansado, as the study of the sense of words and how we interpret sentences and statements. It's kind of the engine room of meaning, right?
It is, absolutely. Semantics is the system that tells us what is meant, not just what is said. It interacts with grammar and context to express human thought. And its primary function is explaining the meaning of messages by analyzing the context and, critically, the syntactic relationship. The arrangement of the words in a phrase.
That arrangement.
That arrangement is what ultimately resolves ambiguity.
And we as humans do this intuitively all the time. If I say, that was a real snake, I probably don't mean a reptile.
Yeah.
You understand, I mean a deceitful person. You use the context to resolve that ambiguity instantly.
That's a perfect illustration of the difference we need to get our heads around here. Let's use a slightly more universal example first, one that resonates culturally perhaps. The word home.
Okay. Hum.
If I ask you for the denotation, the literal definition, what would you say?
Probably something like a permanent structure where one lives. A house, an apartment.
Right. Objective, literal, dictionary meaning. That's denotation.
Got it.
But what is the connotation of home?
Okay, that's different. It carries, baggage, right? Warmth, comfort, family, safety, rootedness, feelings.
Exactly. Those are the emotional, contextual, and subjective meanings attached to it. Now, if a search algorithm only understands the denotation of home,
the structure,
it will completely miss the intent of a search query like how to feel more at home in a new city.
Because that user isn't asking for blueprints for a house.
No. They're asking for comfort and belonging. They're asking about the connotation.
Okay, so if traditional keyword SEO focused purely on denotation, just matching the explicit word home to pages that use the explicit word home,
Which is often how it works, yeah.
then semantic SEO is fundamentally concerned with the connotation. It's helping algorithms understand the subjective, figurative meaning and all those associations that create new ideas and context.
Precisely. It's about what we mean, not just what we are saying.
Okay, to drive this point home, let's explore that great anecdote the source uses, the ambiguity test. It really highlights how dependent meaning is on context, even when the words themselves seem clear.
Yeah, it's a good one. The example is the Portuguese phrase, Alex chutou o pau da barraca.
Which literally translates to, Alex kicked the tent pole. Sounds simple enough.
It does, but this presents two radically different potential meanings, forcing the reader or the algorithm to apply semantic analysis based on the context.
Okay, so the first potential meaning is the denotation. Alex literally physically kicked the wooden pole, holding up a rustic camping tent. Maybe he was clumsy, maybe angry at the tent, who knows?
Right, the physical act. That's one possibility. But the second interpretation is the connotation. Chutado pau da barraca is a very common idiomatic expression in Portuguese.
Ah, an idiom. Okay.
Yeah, and it means Alex took a radical, tempestuous attitude, threw a massive fit, lost his temper completely, or basically disrupted the entire situation. The meaning is the emotional outburst, the expression, not the physical act of kicking a pole.
Gotcha. And the SEO professional, or maybe we should call them the content engineer now,
I like that, yeah.
must build the content so clearly, structure it so well, that the search algorithm instantly determines whether we mean physical carpentry or, an emotional meltdown.
That difficulty in resolving ambiguity, that's the core challenge that some semantic SEO really sets out to solve systematically.
And the problem with the old denotative approach, the keyword matching, is that it's just too simplistic, too prone to misunderstanding.
That's the argument. If you structure your content based purely on denotation,
Mm.
you are only communicating what you're saying. By structuring for connotation, using context and relationships, you're communicating what you mean. And you do that by establishing the contextual relationship between those words, those concepts. That carefully built structure is what generates the deeper relevance that the algorithm needs to qualify your content as high quality. It confirms the user's intent.
Okay, so the moment we accept that semantic SEO is focused on structured connotation, this deeper meaning, we have to shift our view of individual words, right? The source material makes a critical point here. A word is merely a representative of an underlying idea, concept, or entity. It is not the thing itself. That's a huge shift for content creators who are maybe taught to fixate on the individual word.
It really is a mindset change.
Yeah.
We use words, titles, descriptions, as well as linguistic proxies for fixed, real-world concepts or ideas. And this is precisely why entities are so fundamental to semantic structuring.
Right, the entities.
The source uses a perfect illustration of this, the Pele example.
Ah, yes. Explain how different words can represent the exact same thing and why that matters so much to Google or any search engine.
Okay, so take the entity Edson Arantes do Nascimento, that's his given name.
Right, the person.
You can describe him using completely different phrases. Rei do futebol, king of football.
Okay.
Atleta do século, athlete of the century. Or simply Pele. These are distinct words, different concepts, different linguistic representations. Yet, both a human listener and sophisticated systems like Google's Knowledge Graph instantly understand that all three point to one singular constant entity. The person doesn't change.
So the entity itself is fixed. It's constant, regardless of the linguistic variants used to describe it. And that fixed point, that anchor, is what allows the algorithm to overcome the ambiguity of the language used.
Precisely. If I write an article that uses the phrase king of football, and I link that phrase using structured schema markup, for instance, to the specific entity ID for Edson Arantes do Nascimento in a knowledge graph,
You're anchoring it.
I have resolved any potential ambiguity about which king or which football I am referring to. I'm not talking about, say, King Charles or American football. I have explicitly defined the concept by linking it to the known entity.
Therefore, the primary functional reason for using entities in semantic SEO is to provide that concrete scaffolding needed to resolve ambiguity. We are linking our content to known, defined, non-ambiguous concepts in the wider world, and this makes the content instantly more precise and relevant to a user's specific intent, even if they don't use the exact same words we did.
Think about the practical application. If a user searches for athlete of the century records, right? And your article is beautifully structured around the Pele entity, even if it doesn't happen to explicitly use the exact phrase athlete of the century everywhere.
Right.
The algorithm sees the deep, non-ambiguous connection via the knowledge graph and can confidently serve your content. This is how semantic SEO aims to transcend simple keyword matching. It's about concept matching.
That makes sense. That said, it's vital to reiterate the source's warning about hierarchy here. While entities are critical tools for ambiguity resolution,
Very critical, yes.
they are still just one part of a much broader strategy. They aren't the whole game.
No, definitely not. They are a means to the strategic end. And that end goal is the complete internal conceptual alignment of the organization's knowledge. If you simply chase entities, identifying and marking them up without aligning the broader taxonomies and domain knowledge first.
You're just doing part of it.
You have merely performed entity SEO, which is a valuable tactic, don't get me wrong, but it's not the comprehensive strategy of semantic SEO as defined here.
Okay.
And we must always remember that the rejection of keyword research is sort of the starting point. Structuring the entire knowledge domain from the inside out is the ultimate goal. Entities help you build that structure accurately.
Okay, this brings us neatly to the core differentiator, the real paradigm shift, maybe, that separates semantic SEO from almost every other optimization approach we usually talk about, including standalone entity SEO and topic clusters. And that difference is the approach to structuring the entire content project from the inside out.
Yes. Historically, as we touched on earlier, SEO has been largely reactive. It's the outside-in model. We look outward, we react to public search interest, we monitor competitors, we prioritize content based on search volume data.
Right. If 50,000 people are searching for best kitchen gadget, well, that's where the content goes. We let the external market demand define our content blueprint.
We follow the traffic.
Yeah.
But the sources state explicitly that this just doesn't happen in semantic SEO. Not like that.
So how does it work instead?
The focus shifts aggressively inward, towards the organization itself, the one that owns the content and, more importantly, the knowledge behind it. The primary objective becomes understanding every conceivable conceptual boundary and detail of the organization's specific domain of knowledge.
It's expertise.
Its core expertise, exactly.
And this internal assessment, then, dictates everything else that follows, the whole strategy.
According to this approach, yes, everything. The intrinsic knowledge assessment becomes the master blueprint. It defines the content strategy, any required architectural changes to the site, the taxonomies you need to build, the controlled vocabularies you need to enforce.
Controlled vocabularies, okay.
The necessary entities to identify and link, and the construction of internal or external knowledge graphs. We are defining what we are expert in, structuring that expertise, and then structuring our output to reflect that expertise unambiguously.
Rather than simply reflecting the external noise of whatever search queries are popular this month.
Exactly. It's proactive, not reactive.
Okay, so for the listener who's thinking, right, I want to try this. How does one actually perform a domain of knowledge analysis? What are the practical steps involved in looking inward and mapping out your intrinsic expertise? It sounds big.
It is a rigorous process, no doubt, and it borrows heavily from information science, from librarianship, actually. First, you must define the boundaries very clearly. What specific area of human expertise does your organization truly cover? So if you're a specialized financial firm, you don't just define your domain as finance. That's way too broad. You define it perhaps as North American fixed income municipal bonds for institutional investors, something highly specific.
Right. That specificity prevents us from having to compete on those huge, broad, ambiguous terms like finance.
Correct. You define your niche. Once the boundaries are set, you must identify every core concept, term, procedure, function, process within that defined domain. This often involves creating a controlled vocabulary.
Exactly.
It's essentially a standardized, agreed-upon set of terms that your entire organization, from the engineers building the product to the marketers writing the copy, uses internally to refer to the same concepts.
Ah, so it removes internal organizational ambiguity first, making sure everyone's on the same page.
Precisely. You need internal clarity before you can project external clarity. So if the external world calls something an SEO strategy, but internally, based on your deep domain analysis, you realize what you're doing is a conceptual alignment framework. You standardize on the latter term for all your internal knowledge, construction, documentation, and eventually your public-facing content structure.
You're standardizing reality in a way for your content architecture.
You are. And this is then followed by building taxonomies, which are hierarchical classifications of those concepts. This belongs under that, which belongs under this broader category.
Like a family tree of concepts.
Sort of, yeah. And eventually, potentially, building ontologies, which go even further than hierarchy. Ontologies define the specific relationships between concepts. For example, not just that A is a part of B, but that A causes B, or A is defined by C, or A is treated with D. Much richer relationships.
Wow. Okay. That sounds like a monumental organizational task. It seems like it requires a subject matter expert to essentially become an information architect or a knowledge manager.
It absolutely does. It's a different skill set.
Yeah.
And the author's own professional anecdote, the medicine case study mentioned in the source, perfectly illustrates the depth required.
Right. Tell us about that.
They had to take on a project in the medical field. And their first step wasn't running keyword reports or looking at competitor sites. It was total immersion in the subject matter.
Immersion.
They realized they had to actually learn, really deeply understand every single core concept, term, procedure, function, and strategy that composed the domain of knowledge of medicine itself, at least the specific subdomain relevant to the project.
So they weren't optimizing content based on, say, what symptoms patients were searching for externally.
Not initially, no.
They were structuring the site based on the inherent logical hierarchical concepts of medicine as understood by doctors and researchers.
Exactly. The structure had to reflect the truth of the domain. They needed to appropriate that entire conceptual structure internally, first creating the internal controlled vocabulary for medical terms, the taxonomies of diagnoses, procedures, conditions, relationships between them, before they could confidently define the overall strategy, create the properly optimized content, or deploy the semantic markup needed.
So that deep internal knowledge assessment is the absolute prerequisite for doing semantic SEO properly, according to this source. You simply cannot optimize a concept you haven't mastered and structurally categorized internally first.
That's the core message. You build from your strength, from your structured knowledge.
It fundamentally changes the job description of the SEO consultant, doesn't it? You are not just a traffic acquisition specialist anymore. You are becoming a knowledge systems engineer for the organization.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
You are essentially building the intellectual capital of the business into a machine-readable format.
And the practical implication for the organization is potentially profound. By looking inward first, you are defining your unique expertise in a way that is arguably impossible for competitors who are still just reacting to those high-volume, often ambiguous search trends.
Right. Your content becomes uniquely relevant because it's structurally superior and unambiguous within its defined niche. It stands on a foundation of organized knowledge.
What's so compelling about this inside-out approach, I think, is that it's not just presented as some, contemporary response to the latest Google algorithm updates. It actually has deep historical roots in information science. The source material highlights the author's background, synthesizing 2 decades in digital optimization with a second degree in librarianship and information science. That seems key.
That background is clearly the foundation of this entire strategy. The author explicitly sees an intrinsic and highly applicable connection between modern digital optimization work and the traditional tools that librarians have used for centuries.
Which tools are those?
Things like indexation, classification, and categorization of information. These are the disciplines dedicated purely to organizing knowledge for efficient retrieval, regardless of what specific words the user happens to use when they're looking for something.
That makes perfect sense when you put it like that. A librarian ensures that whether you search for a book by the exact title or maybe the author's nickname or even the specific subject classification number, you find the exact same document. The system prioritizes the underlying concept, the entity of the book, over the surface-level search terms someone typed in.
And that's exactly what sophisticated search algorithms are trying to do today, right? Understand the intent behind the words.
Yeah.
And this is where we see the classic tools of librarianship. Things like domain analysis, building controlled vocabularies, creating taxonomies, and designing ontologies, intersecting directly with the cutting edge of artificial intelligence today.
Really? How so?
The author is actively connecting these established information science tools to modern AI applications.
Okay, what are those modern applications? How does a taxonomy maybe created in, 1990 interact with a large language model today?
Well, we're talking about building and leveraging knowledge graphs,
Yeah.
those structured networks of facts and entities that Google and others use to understand the world. We're also talking about understanding the foundational mechanisms of things like autonomous agents and large language models, LLMs. The structure created by the librarian's classification tools, that ontology that defines the concepts and their relationships, is essentially the perfect training data or grounding data for these AI systems. It gives them context and accuracy.
Ah, interesting. The source material specifically mentions concepts like token and embedding from the AI and LLM world as being relevant to this semantic work. Now, for listeners who might find that jargon a bit heavy, can we clarify what an embedding means in this context? What is that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a key concept. An embedding is essentially a highly technical numerical representation of a concept's meaning. Think of it like a massive multidimensional space, like a coordinate map, but with hundreds or thousands of dimensions.
Okay, a map of meaning.
Kind of, yeah. Every concept, every word, every entity, every idea is given a coordinate, a specific location, in that high-dimensional space. And the crucial part is concepts that are conceptually similar are located extremely close together on that map.
So proximity equals similarity.
Exactly. For example, the embedding, the numerical coordinate for the word dog, and the embedding for the word canine will be nearly identical in their coordinates. They'll be right next to each other in that space.
Why?
Because the model has learned from vast amounts of text that they are used in incredibly similar contexts. This proximity proves their deep conceptual similarity, regardless of the fact that they are different explicit words.
So an LLM doesn't just recognize that dog and canine are synonyms based on a list somewhere. It sees them as occupying virtually the same location in its conceptual space because their numerical representations, their embeddings, are so similar.
Yes, that's the core idea. And semantic SEO, through structured data, careful domain analysis, and building those taxonomies and ontologies, well, it's essentially guiding the algorithm by helping create these tight, accurate conceptual clusters in the machine's embedding space.
We're helping it map our knowledge correctly.
We are engineering the content and structure so that the relevant concepts sit close together, accurately reflecting their real-world relationships. The more organized and less ambiguous your internal knowledge structure, your ontology is, the more efficiently the machine can map your expertise and understand your content's true meaning.
Okay, this integrated vision, combining the long-term perspective of information science, the practicalities of content engineering, and these emerging AI possibilities, it really requires a completely different kind of professional, doesn't it?
It seems so, yes.
It requires someone who can move beyond just marketing tactics to interpret complex research results, understand these deeper structures, and align this intricate semantic strategy with specific business objectives. It's a big ask.
It is. That's why the traditional SEO guy might be evolving, as we said, into more of a knowledge architect or a content engineer. You are translating the organization's unique internal domain expertise into a structured, unambiguous format that machines can instantly consume and, crucially, trust.
And it's this trust, built on clarity and structure, that ultimately drives the relevance and the long-term ranking authority in this view.
That's the goal. Sustainable authority based on genuine, well-structured expertise. Hashtag outro.
Wow. Okay, this deep dive has really shown us that the future of content relevance, according to these sources, hinges on a pretty monumental conceptual shift. To quickly review the key takeaways, well, semantic SEO is predicated on the explicit rejection of keyword volume as a primary driving force for content strategy.
I agree.
Its success lies in helping the algorithm understand connotation, what we truly mean by structurally resolving ambiguity in our content.
Getting beyond the surface words.
And the entire strategy is uniquely differentiated by that paradigm shift toward internal knowledge domain analysis, demanding that organizations look inward first to structure their unique expertise before looking outward.
The inside-out approach.
Yeah.
So the application for you, the professional listening, is clear. Semantic SEO, as defined here, transforms the optimizer into something more like a knowledge engineer. You're moving beyond just reacting to search engines to actively guiding them.
Guiding them.
By using rigorous tools like ontologies, taxonomies, and domain analysis, which are rooted in the stability and principles of information science. The goal is to establish your content not just as an answer, but potentially as the foundational source of truth within your carefully defined domain.
Okay, that leaves us with a provocative thought to consider as you think about how to potentially implement this inside-out approach in your own organization. If semantic SEO is focused entirely on building structured meaning from deep internal domain knowledge analysis, and that requires organizational consensus on classification and conceptual vocabulary, how fundamentally does that change the composition and the required expertise of a content creation team?
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah, should every content creator now be trained in information classification, or at least understand the basic principles of ontologies and taxonomies to ensure the content they write is built for conceptual clarity from the ground up and not just for word count or surface-level appeal?
Does everyone need to be a mini librarian?
Maybe. That's the challenge, perhaps, of becoming truly structurally relevant in the age of AI-driven search. Something to think about.
Indeed. The future of ranking success might just be structurally sound knowledge.
We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.